So what I've decided to do for this weekend is, just to give you guys some more content, I've decided to go ahead and repost a couple of my fan fictions. Not because I don't have any other ideas of things to do, but because we have a lot of other viewers that haven't had a chance to see that. And sifting through almost 500 videos just to find something like this would be darn near impossible. So I'm going to go ahead and repost those just for the weekend. We will get back to live streams soon. It's just been, my work schedule's been really hectic and I'm having a hard time navigating how to get into the live streams. But they will be returning when normalcy continues. Thank you. Good day, Star Wars fans, and welcome back to Star Wars Fanatic. So, in preparation for the finale of the Jango Fett fanfiction series I've been working on, I went ahead and put together some of the other videos in a cohesive manner. The first part is episodes 1 through 3. This is a lengthy video, so if you don't have time to watch it all, just continue it later. I'm doing this so some of our newer subscribers can catch up before I release the finale. So you can either watch it this way or go to the playlist that I'll link down in the description. So without any more hesitation, here it is, my Jango Fett fanfiction, parts 1 through 3. Concord Dawn was an agricultural planet. It was within the Mandalorian sector, but most on the planet were farmers. Even though they were warriors, they had little experience with it up until now. It was nearing Jango Fett's 11th birthday when his father got the news. The former journeyman protector on Concord Dawn, Jaster Mereel, had become the Mandalore. Jaster was more like a ghost, at least to the Fett family. Jango, his older sister Arla, nor their mother had ever seen Jaster. His father had claimed to meet him a few times, but that was before Jango could remember, and it was in secret. But those meetings must have went well, because Jango's father received a hologram from one of Jaster's confidants that he would be replacing Jaster as the journeyman protector of Concord Dawn. There were mixed emotions in the Fett house that day. Jango's father was an honorable man and felt it was his duty to accept the position of journeyman protector. He knew it would take him from his family often. He didn't see it taking him off on adventures as it did Jaster Mereel, though. Jaster was more of a warrior, not a lawman. Jango and Arla felt a new sense of importance. Their father was the lawman. Their friends would be so jealous when they found out. However, not much changed, other than a few times a standard month of Jango's father going on meetings or investigations. He spent a lot of time at home working the farm with the family. It was nice. They had structure, but they still had their father. Jango and Arla were very close. Arla would pretend she was a warrior and teach Jango how to be stealthy while playing in the fields of their farm. Arla was always better at it, but Jango was improving. See, Arla was about to turn 13 in a few months and had to make a decision. Will she be a Mandalorian and join the warriors, or would she go out on her own? It was a tense time for Jango. Either way, he was going to lose his sister. But he tried to put it out of his mind and heed his father's lessons. Be in the moment. Concentrate on the time you are in. Stay present in the now. He said he had heard it from a Jedi or something. Whatever that was. But it seemed to work. He didn't worry too much about losing her and just enjoyed the time they had. She was so smart and cunning. He wished he could be like her. He wanted to be able to at least have the decision to be a warrior, but had to wait a couple more years. She was lucky. As they played in the fields, he would pretend he was wearing his father's Beskar, while Arla was in their mother's own armor. Crouching behind the wheat, silently waiting for her to come near, then springing up at her and yelling, "There's a bounty on your head, and I intend to collect." Arla would just chuckle. "You're getting really good at this, Jango. You'll make a fine Mandalorian bounty hunter one day." Jango would just smile and blush. This went on through Jango's 11th birthday and to the day before his sister's 13th birthday. It got to the point that Jango could stalk Arla and capture her with full confidence that she wasn't letting him win. Sure, it took him longer to track her than it did for her to track him when it was her turn, but He could feel he was getting better, and one day they would be side by side on Mandalore representing Clan Fett. It made him less afraid of his sister going away for the next day. It made him excited for her. He would now see himself as the protector of his home and family, even if it was really his father that was the protector. Early the next morning, Arla and Jango sprung out of bed. It was time. She was going to join the Mandalorians and be a warrior. He would be following soon, and with her going through it first, he knew what he could expect when his time comes. But their mother and father acted as if nothing had changed. Their father was stern in telling them to go to the fields and get the harvester fired up. Arla protested, "But father," as he cut her off in a sterner tone, "do as I said. We will discuss this later." It was odd because just the day before their father was smiling and seemed excited for Arla's big day. The siblings walked slowly to the fields, dragging their feet and sobbing as they went. Jango felt so bad for Arla, but he tried to encourage her. He said he would talk to you about it later. "I'm sure he just has some police stuff to take care of." Arla just mumbled something and said, "Yeah." Then Jango replied, "Hey, let's play bounty hunter to take your mind off it." Arla perked up a little and said, "Okay, father seems busy and may not notice if we ditch the chores for a little while. Go ahead and hide and I'll find you." Then Jango sprinted into the fields, carrying his dummy rifle, which he had hidden under a rock. This spot was new. Arla would never find him there. Just as he was about to get down behind the tall wheat, his father appeared. "Jango, what are you doing? I asked you and your sister to get the harvester going." Jango replied, "But father, I was trying to cheer—" His father interrupted. "I said the harvester. Where is your sister?" Jango explained that she would find him in no time. He asked his father what he was carrying. His father just said it was food for a beggar and to keep working. Jango returned to the harvester. He worked on it until it started running, but there was still no sign of Arla. He called out to her several times, but there was no response. He shut off the harvester with the remote and decided to call out to her one more time since it was a little quieter. Maybe this time he could hear her. "Arla," he called out. No response. "Arla, the game is over. Father wants us—" He stopped talking and became mute as he saw strange men in Mandalorian armor appear from the fields. The leader had Arla by the hair and was dragging her. She was pulling at his hand as she cried to be released. "Hello there, boy," the man said to Jango. "Where is he?" "Where is who?" Jango reacted. "And let go of my sister." "Where is the man your father has been helping? Where is Jaster?" The man rephrased. "There is no one here but us. My father is the journeyman protector of Concord Dawn. You're going to be in big trouble," Jango advised. The group of men started laughing, and Jango could hear them mumbling as if mocking him. "Journeyman protector, oh, we should leave." Jango ran at the men, and the butt of his dummy gun found the leader in the knee. Everything went dark. Jango awoke to Arla telling him to wake up and shaking him, well, the best she could with binders around her wrists. She sat next to him on the ground, and when his eyes opened, he saw the men standing over his father. Jango's father was bleeding from his mouth, and he was being struck repeatedly. He stood his ground, though, and did not show emotion. The father of the Fett family was not one to let his children know he was in duress. "I told you, Tor Vizsla, I don't know where Jaster Mereel is. We tracked him here to your farm. You have a duty to Mandalore as the journeyman protector to uphold the law, especially where criminals such as Jaster are concerned," persuaded Tor Vizsla. Jango hadn't noticed before, but now he sees why Arla was crying, and he as well began to weep. Their mother lay just beside their father's knees, headless. "I have a duty to the Mandalore," replied Fett. The man put his black-bladed energy sword in the father's face, raised it, and with one swipe, their father lay headless with their mother. Arla whispered to Jango, "Run." And Jango did. He began low to the ground in order to hide behind the tall grass. He heard footsteps chasing him and looked back to make sure Arla was keeping up. He never ran this fast in his life, but Arla was nowhere near him. He couldn't see her. "Arla," he whispered as he ran faster. Still no answer, but now there were footsteps breaking the wheat, laying on the ground, just ahead of him. He crouched down and tried to hide the best he could. Just then, he was picked up by the back of his shirt, stood to his feet, and turned around. It was Jaster Mereel, or what he imagined was Jaster Mereel. Jango recognized him from his father's description, his gray and red armor, the yellow diamond shape on his chest. They killed Arla. Gone. Jango tried to explain. Jaster put his hand on the boy's shoulder. Your family did a great service for my men and myself, but they are gone now. We must leave, unless you want to die too. Cold and cruel sounding, Jango doubled his fists and pounded at the man's chest. Boy, Jango, is it? They are gone, and unless you want to die too, we need to leave now. He was calm. He grabbed Jango up and threw him over his shoulder and sprinted off into the fields. On the other side of the Fett farm, there was a clearing, but it wasn't clear. A Mandalorian warship awaited to pick up the group. As they left the ground, Jango was still crying. He could see his family farm burning in the distance as another warship lifted from the ground and pointed right at them. Jaster yelled, Montrose, here they come. Get us out of the atmosphere and make the jump to hyperspace. The pilot shouted back, Where to, boss? Navarro, for all I care, just get us out of here. Jango looked up at Jaster Mereel, the man who was supposed to be leading the Mandalorian people, the Mandalore himself, and asked, Why is this happening? The confusion rattled the boy's voice. He was still thinking about seeing his father killed and his mother lay dead. He didn't know what happened to Arla. She was probably killed with them. He was all alone now, the last Fett. Jaster answered, I will explain when we are out of here. Blaster shots narrowly missed the ship's hull as they broke the atmosphere. The tension was building, and the 5 or so Mandalorians with them were trying not to be frantic. I said get us out of here, Jaster reminded. The Navi computer is getting the coordinates, Montrose rebutted. Just then, a blaster bolt struck their hull just as they jumped to hyperspace. It was a minor hit, but caused a small fire inside. It was quickly extinguished, but Jango could tell everyone was ready to just collapse. For the remainder of the trip, Jango remained silent. He did not sleep, but would catch himself dozing off and jerking back awake. It wasn't intentional. His mind was just racing with everything that had happened. It was too much to take in. Kid, Jaster said, looking right at Jango, your father told me you and your sister wanted to be Mandalorian warriors. Jango looked up with tear-filled eyes. Yeah, but, well, you are getting that chance early, boy. Jango, right? Your father was enormously proud of you and your sister. I'm sorry for your family, but it's done, and you can either move on from it and avenge their deaths, or let it consume you and eventually kill you with them. It's your choice. As Jaster pressed the canteen of water against Jango's chest, Jango had never been to space before. The white and blue swirls of the hyperspace lane almost hypnotized him. He thought for a moment. He relived the memory of his father dying, running through the fields, not seeing Arla again, and the more he relived it, the angrier he got. It must have been visible to everyone because Jaster gained a sideways smile as one corner of his mouth pointed up, and he said in a soft voice, There it is. Jango, you're going to be all right. For the rest of the journey, Jaster explained to Jango who was hunting them and why. It was a group called the Death Watch. They were led by a man named Tor Vizsla and didn't hold the same ideas as Jaster and his group, nor Jango's father, who called themselves the True Mandalorians. Death Watch wanted to return to the old ways of Mandalore by conquering and killing. He then told Jango that his family was killed for helping him, for being an honorable man and sticking to his duties as a protector, by not letting the Death Watch intimidate him. His father was one of the bravest men he had ever seen, as was his mother and sister. She would have made a fine warrior in the Mandalore ranks. Jango cried one more time, then quickly dried his tears and replaced them with a hot feeling in his head and his chest. He looked at Jaster and said 2 words, Teach me. If I teach you, you become my son. I take you in and repay your family for what they did for me and my men, replied Jaster. Teach me, replied Jango. Okay then, men, we have ourselves a new member. Meet Jango Fett. son of Jaster Mereel. Everyone clapped and gave their approval. Jango was now one of them. But it would not be an easy transition. He would go through many challenges, and this was nothing like what he and his sister had done to prepare for being warriors. He had plenty of heart and fight in him, but it was draining, hard work all the time. Jaster would wake Jango early in the morning, just in time to train as the lava rivers would retract. The ground was still hot and molten in some places, so he had to move fast. There was a lot of running. In fact, that's all it seemed like he did. His hand-to-hand training was brutal. It really seemed Jaster was out to kill him as they sparred. He had to defend himself a lot better with someone who called him son than he had with anyone who had called him his enemy. Not that he had any enemies, but there were always rivalries in school on Concord Dawn and little fights. The entire time Jaster was kicking his gut in, he was teaching him not just how to fight, but how to think, how to outsmart your opponent. He was surprised at how good Jango was at tracking. He would often send one of his men out with a head start and send Jango after them. It would take a bit, but Jango would eventually track them down. He would tell Jango that this isn't Concord Dawn. He would have to track people through space and land. His skills are impressive, but need to be better. Training, and more training, until what Jango thought was his own 13th birthday. To him, it was time to make the decision. Would he remain with Jaster and the true Mandalorians? Or would he go off on his own as an Arueti? To him, becoming an outsider after all this training would not make him an Arueti, but rather Darmanda, or soulless and unworthy of the Mandalorian gods. The choice was easy. When he approached Jaster, he told him he thinks it's his 13th birthday. Jaster looked at him with a puzzled expression. He reminded Jaster that it was time to choose. Jaster's eyes grew wider. You chose to come with me 2 years ago. You chose to learn from me. I called you son. It seems you made the choice then. Jango smiled. He felt at home. This is where he belonged. He knew it from the moment they left Concord Dawn. But armor was scarce in the group, and he would have to wait to look like a true Mandalorian. In the meantime, they were always getting into little battles with the Death Watch. Jaster would win some, and Tor Vizsla would win some, no one really gaining the high ground. Then, there was word that another group of Mandalorians were forming to take control. They called themselves the New Mandalorians. They were a pacifist group that believed the old warrior ways of Mandalore should die out and they should become a peaceful state, rather than one of war and destruction. They didn't agree with bounty hunting and private security as professions, and thought those who did were barbaric and had no place in Mandalorian society. Years went by as the struggle between the two sides of warriors continued. Jango grew smarter and stronger, gaining the trust of every Mandalorian in their group and making a fine leader at that. He showed no mercy in battle, but still held the code close to him. Do not involve innocent people that had no reason to be involved. Many followers of Death Watch fell to Jango Fett. He envisioned each one as the one who murdered his father, mother, and sister, and he gained the notice of Tor Vizsla. Jango Fett was becoming a thorn in his side. While the two factions fought it out, the pacifists moved in and took control of Mandalore. The distractions were enough, and the warriors never saw it coming. This enraged Tor Vizsla. He needed to end the war now. He knew what would knock Jango off his feet, and it was time to utilize it. On the other side, Jaster was also angered by the move of the new Mandalorians. He was the rightful ruler. It had been decided 15 years earlier. How many groups are going to try to lay claim to his throne? This civil war needed to end now. The next time they run into the Death Watch, it was time to wipe them out. Jango Fett sits on the edge of a cliff. He watches as the sun sets and the lava rivers of Navarro begin to fill. This was a nightly occurrence, and the Mandalorians saw it as a defense that was natural to the planet, and it worked in their favor. Not that they have ever been attacked on their new home, but it was good to have just in case. Jango knew, as did Jaster Mereel, that not all Mandalorians had jetpacks. As Jango watched the serene destruction flowing through the molten valley, his thought turned to his family, specifically his sister Arla. He wished he had that last moment with her. He really wished she would have lived to see him in his new armor. She would have been so proud of him, and they would have made an amazing team in this war, brother and sister, as true Mandalorians, fighting the evil Death Watch. Jango was blowing off training for a moment. With battling Death Watch and training with Jaster, he barely had a moment to reflect on everything. He was a young man now, and his sister's birthday was approaching. He remembered how disappointed she was that she didn't get to go off to be a Mandalorian. How it was unfair that he was able to do it, but she never was. Every time he fought in battle, it was for the memory of Arla Fett. He missed her so much. As his mind started to wander deeper into thought, he became more and more angry. Then it happened. On the ridge across from where he was sitting, he saw a silhouette. That isn't a place his comrades usually trained. He quickly abandoned his thought and put his helmet on and dropped his rangefinder. It was hard to make out who it was as he got down to a prone position, but he could clearly make out the white marking on the helmet. Death Watch. This one seemed to be alone, and as far as Jango Fett could tell, he had not been spotted. But it was only a matter of time until his team was. He had to go warn them. Jango scooted down out of sight, then crawled a little further until he knew he would not be seen. He made it back to the village and rushed into Jaster's hut. He told Jaster what he had seen and wanted to take 2 men with him to surround the foe. Jaster agreed. Jango gathered up 2 of his most trusted friends, Miles and Silas. The 2 were brothers of Clan Scarata, a prominent family before this war broke out, but now they were the only 2 left. They had trained with Jango from the time he was a foundling, and all 3 could anticipate each other in battle. Montross disagreed with Jaster's decision to let Jango take charge of this mission. Even though it was a small mission, it could ignite them into leaving their home if something went wrong. Jaster replied by saying, "If this scout is here looking for us, we have already lost our home." Montross stormed out of the hut in anger, mumbling and cursing under his breath. Jaster looked to Jango and said, "You are the lead in this one. Capture the scout and bring him alive." Jango nodded his head and gave the other 2 a look. Both grasped their weapons and nodded. He had their full support. "Let's go. For Mandalore." Then both replied, "For Mandalore." As they set out, night fell and darkness was upon them. The team crouched into the spot Jango had been when he had spotted the intruder. But the intruder was gone. It didn't take long to find the enemy. He was alone at his ship just a few kilometers from where Jango had first seen him. They watched him for a moment and heard him speak. Kyra Wren reporting. "The reports on Navarro have so far turned up nothing. Continuing my search." "Good. They haven't been spotted." The trio was so close they could hear the rock beneath Kyra's boots. Jango motioned for Miles to go left and Silas to go right. Each knew that once they were in position, they would spring forth and surprise their new friend. Just as they got into position, the man called out, "Come out. I know you're there. You're sloppy." Just then, the trio sprung out from hiding. Silas grabbed him from the back, and Miles punched him so hard it knocked him out. Now, they had to carry dead weight. They stripped him of his armor and weapons and carried him back to their village. Jango thought of the event all the way back. This was too easy. Was it a trap? What did Death Watch have up their sleeves? When he arrived at the village, he warned Jaster of how easy it was to capture him. Jaster grabbed the man by the jaw, who was now tied up in a chair. "Wake up," he shouted into his ear. The man fought to open his eyes one at a time. Montross slapped him across the head to try to jolt him awake. Jaster spoke up. "That is no way to treat our guest. Now, go get him some water." Montross mumbled just loud enough for Jaster to hear him as he walked away. Guest. He should be killed where he sits. If anyone thinks differently, they should be killed as well. Jaster untied the man. "Let's talk. You remind me of an old friend. Clan Wren?" The man replied, "Yes, sir." Jaster cocked his head sideways. "So cordial. We are all friends here. Call me Jaster." The man looked up, surprised. "How did you know?" Jaster interrupted. You have your father's eyes. How's your sister? Ursa, isn't it? She is well. Hates you, though. That's understandable. Your father and I were close. We served together on an assignment to Ord Mantell. I'm sure he feels betrayed, as does Ursa. My father was killed 6 months ago. His ship was damaged and he drifted into Hutt space. Then they shot him down. I'm sorry to hear that. We didn't always agree, but he was a good man and a great warrior. So what brings you here, young Wren? I was sent to find you in your hideout. I knew you were here, but I reported that I didn't see anything. Jaster looked at Jango. Jango shook his head and responded, It's true. We heard him. Puzzled, Jaster asked the young boy why he would do that. He asked if he was not honorable to his cause. The boy responded, I don't believe in conquering. I want to be a warrior with honor and dignity. Death Watch does not allow that. Jaster, even more puzzled. You would leave your sister? She is your clan. That's part of the creed. Are you prepared to face her in battle? Ursa split from our father's ideals and teachings. She is nothing like him. Montross interrupted. Are you really going to believe this rubbish? He should kill him now and flee Navarro. Death Watch, Jango interrupted. Listen to your Mandalore. He is in command, not you. Montross leapt at Jango, catching his throat in his hand. Jango landed an uppercut and put his blade to Montross's throat. Miles and Silas jumped in and pulled Jango back while Jaster interjected. Jango, calm yourself. I can handle my own commands. Jango stepped back and replied, Yes, Father. Montross laughed. That's right. Do as Daddy says. Jaster walked over to Kyra Wren and untied him. You are welcome to stay, but they will come looking for you. They will track you here. Kyra responded, No, sir. Just before your men attacked me, I set my droid to fly my ship into Hutt space and self-destruct. Jaster was becoming aware that this was no trap, but still wanted to be cautious. Jango, take Silas and Miles and go to the ship. Report on your findings. Boy, as much as I respected your father, if you are lying to me, I will let Montross kill you right here. Montross grinned. Please be lying. Jango contacted the group when he got to the location of Wren's ship. He tells the truth. His ship is gone, and the heat signature suggests its direction is Tatooine. Jaster smiled at the new recruit. Welcome to the true Mandalorians. In a fit of anger, Montross punched a wall on his way out, cracking the wall of the hut. That night, Jango lay thinking about the whole ordeal. How he would not have turned against his sister, no matter which side she was on. But he knew deep down that Arla would be on his side with the true Mandalorians. The words of Jaster Mereel reverberated throughout his head. You can either move on and avenge your family's deaths, or let it consume you and kill you. Well, it hasn't killed him yet, but he has to avenge them. He must kill Tor Vizsla. Jaster has this ideal that all Mandalorians should come together in peace, and Jango Fett mostly agrees, but not in the case of Tor Vizsla. He killed Jango's father, mother, and sister. He watched Vizsla drag his sister by the hair. The pain was getting to Jango again, and he felt a tear roll down his cheek. He quickly turned the sadness into anger. There is no place for sadness in this war, but anger is an emotion he can use. Just as he was about to fall asleep, Jaster entered his room. Jango, what you did today needs recognition. You led a group and succeeded in your task. You have become an excellent tracker and warrior. Jango interrupted, but he was already going to give up. Jaster interjected, but you didn't know that at the time. And I'm not just talking about that mission. Those men will follow you anywhere. You have everyone's respect and loyalty. Jango chuckled. What about Montross? Jaster gave a sideways smile. No one has Montross' respect or loyalty. He wants to run this group after I'm gone. That is not to happen. You are to be the Mandalore when I fall. If I fall. Jango looked surprised. He would thought it would go to Montross. He had been there since the beginning and fought many times with Jaster. Sure, he was arrogant and quick to judge, but he was a strong leader. Jaster continued. Montross has fear on his side. The men are afraid of him. That makes him unpredictable. That doesn't make a good leader. It makes a tyrant. Jaster stood and began to exit, then turned back to Jango. I would follow you, son. If Jango was about to fall asleep before this conversation, there was no way he would get any rest now. He had no idea that Jaster felt this way. Jaster was great at hiding his thoughts and rarely expressed them, at least not around Jango. Now it makes sense. Jaster had been setting him up for this. Now he thought of Arla more. He really wished she was there for this big news. Jango, eventually as Mandalore. The next morning, Jango Fett was awakened by Miles Skirata. He was almost in a panic. Jango hurried to get his armor on, as was tradition to not be seen without wearing your colors in some way. He rushed out of his hut to see a crowd gathered around Kylo Ren's hut. He pushed everyone aside to see what was going on. He didn't even get inside before he knew. Kylo Ren had been murdered. His body lay half in and half out of his hut, but his head was missing. Not just removed from his body, missing completely. However, his complete armor was still hanging on his bed, complete with his helmet. Jaster Mereel was already in Kylo Ren's hut, along with Montross. Jaster seemed to be questioning Montross about what had happened. Montross did what Montross does. He was being very defensive, shouting and waving his hands about, his square jaw rigid and eyes squinted. How dare you accuse me of this? Yes, I wanted to kill him when he came to us, but I would never go against your orders. But Jango wondered. Rex Lark had been standing watch over his hut. How did anyone get through without an alarm being sounded? It had been expressively ordered that no one was to go in or out of Ren's hut without the approval of Jaster Mereel himself. As Jaster and Montross stood arguing, Jango pushed his way through the crowd to find Rex Lark. Was he already questioned, or was Jango the first to think of this? If so, this was sloppy. But Jango couldn't find him anywhere. Rex was a quiet guy who held the ideals of Super Commando Codex and the Resolnair very close. He was a true Mandalorian through and through. It was not like him to just disappear. It especially was not like him to just murder a prisoner and run away. Jango decided to return to Rex's hut to see if there were any clues to his disappearance in there. He searched everywhere, but found nothing. Just as he was about to exit the hut, Silas and Miles Skirata entered. The same idea we had, huh? What do you make of this, Jango? Jango replies calmly, I'm not sure, but what brings you here? Silas was usually the talker of the two, and Miles generally let him answer for both of them. Silas acknowledged that they wondered how anyone could slip through Rex Lark while he was on duty. As far as putting someone on watch goes, Rex was the best for the job. It was like he never slept, and he saw and heard everything. But now he was missing. The trio decided to take this to Jaster. It seems he was questioning the wrong guy. Upon returning to Kylo Ren's hut, they could hear Jaster and Montross arguing from outside. A lot of the team had grown tired of listening to it and was either sitting around or left the scene entirely. Jango and the Skirata brothers entered the hut, where Ren's headless body still lay, and approached Jaster. Jango put his hand on Jaster's shoulder and told him he thinks he has the wrong guy. Jaster paused for a moment and very sharply replied, I do not have the wrong guy. Montross knows something. He knows what happened to Rex Lark and Kylo Ren, but will not talk. Montross just shook his head. I've told you a million times, I know nothing about this. Jango had to backtrack for a moment. So you know Rex is missing? Jaster looked at Jango like he was stupid. Of course I know Rex is missing. I didn't put my best watch on the door to not account for him missing the next day. Jaster then looks at Montross. I'm tired of talking to you. Jango, Miles, Silas, put him in the brig. Shackle his hands and his feet. Montross, you are under arrest for the murder of prisoner Kylo Ren and the disappearance of Rax Lark, and you will remain in custody until this investigation is over. Montross didn't go without a struggle, but he knew it was pointless to resist as there were too many to fight all of them. He settled down and went with the trio peacefully. But something didn't make sense to Jango. If Montross did this, why was he still there? Why didn't he run? The only possible answer he could come up with was that he had nowhere to go. He was high profile. The Death Watch knew him all too well, and the Hutt cartel had a price on his head for what he had done to one of their own. Even though Montross's safety was almost guaranteed in their little organization, it still didn't make sense. Montross was a good fighter, but he didn't think things through before he acted and would often go off impulse rather than reason. So if he did this, he would have fled, not considering this was the only place he was safe. Jango put Montross in the ray-shielded cell. Montross seemed to resign himself to it and just sat quietly. The next day it came. A single Mandalorian fighter bearing the markings of Death Watch. It had been a while since the true Mandalorians had a run-in with them, but not for lack of trying. Both sides had been in their hidden worlds, scanning different areas looking for each other. Out walked none other than Tor Vizsla from the fighter. Jango watched as the man who killed his family casually strolled down the ramp with a confidence and arrogance that made Jango Fett want to destroy him where he stands. Jaster saw the visible anger in Jango and put his hand on his shoulder. "Calm yourself, son. You will get your chance." Tor had a small security detail with him, including young Ursa Wren, who was no more than maybe 14 years old. Jaster, Jango, Silas, and Miles were there to greet them with the security team. Tor exclaimed, "If you are going to kill one of ours, make sure we do not know where he is at all times. I am here to talk, nothing more." Jaster nods his head, and the team led Tor into Jaster's hut. Tor Vizsla begins the conversation as both sides enjoy some Corellian wine. "I had a tracking device on Kylo Ren. I knew he wasn't killed in hut space. He was acting funny his last days with us." Then Ursa spoke up. "My brother had told me he didn't agree with all of Death Watch's ideals, just before he was sent to scan this system. Tor wanted to send all available here to kill you all, but I talked him into a meeting instead. It doesn't make sense that you would kill my brother, especially if he had come to join you." Jaster nodded. "You are correct. We are in the middle of an investigation. What has happened to your brother is unfortunate, and I was also sorry to hear about the loss of your father. He was a great Mandalorian." Ursa acknowledged his kind words and asked if they could take his body home with them. Jaster nodded and told her it would be his pleasure to return the body to them. As the members of Death Watch boarded their fighter, Tor Vizsla turned to the group. "There is nowhere left for you to hide, where we cannot find you." Moments later, 5 more fighters appeared and began shooting into the crowd of true Mandalorians. Jetpacks ignited and the group dispersed into the air to meet the threat head-on. From the back of the fighters, 3 to 4 Mandalorians jumped out with jetpacks of their own roaring. Jango watched as Tor Vizsla's fighter tried to leave the atmosphere. It was just like him to run from a fight. Jango flew up to meet the man who killed his family as fast as he could, but before Jaster could stop him. Tor's ship turned to meet his aggressor and shot 2 blasts from the front-mounted blasters. One shot landed in Jango's shoulder, penetrating his armor. As Jango plummeted to the surface of Navarro, he could feel the burning pain the blaster had put into his shoulder. Seeing this all develop, Jaster launched upward to catch him and bring him to safety on the ground. Jaster laughed at Jango. "This is not your first time being wounded." Jango replied, "I saw something. Someone. I'll explain later." It was obvious this battle was only meant to cover Tor's escape from Navarro. As soon as his fighter left the atmosphere, the others retreated as well. They would take no chance of having their leader, presumed alone, to be shot down. The words of Tor Vizsla were true, though. The true Mandalorians needed to leave Navarro. They were now on the defensive, as they have been for most of this civil war. As Jango healed aboard their own fighter, Jaster asked him what he had seen. Jango's response was that he wasn't sure. Just after being hit by Tor's blaster, he thought he saw his sister in the cockpit of the ship. He did acknowledge that he could have been hallucinating from the shock of being hit and the pain. It was only a quick glimpse before he began to fall. With a mournful look, Jaster told Jango it would have been impossible. Tor Vizsla did not believe in foundlings. If you were not born into the Mandalorian society, he would not take you in. His sister was most likely killed by Tor Vizsla the day Jaster found Jango. Okay, so that concludes the first 3 parts of my Jango Fett fan fiction based on the open seasons and bounty hunter video game from the early days. But let me know in the comments below what you think, and as always, don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment to see more Star Wars content from me. Thank you for watching, and remember, this is the way, the only way.